Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we are strapping on our safety harnesses and going deep into an area most people tend to overlook until it is way too late.
That's right.
We're talking about the mandatory, very specific requirements for deck repair on commercial properties and multi-unit complexes.
And in places like Vancouver, that means we're really focusing heavily on strata developments.
Exactly. So our mission today is to, create a shortcut to compliance. We're going to focus laser-like on that essential first step.
The inspection.
The inspection.
Right. You see, it's not like just fixing a rotten board on your house.
Yeah.
These commercial and multi-unit structures, they face a completely different reality.
A different set of risks.
Totally. We're talking exponentially heavier loads, far stricter regulations, and this is the big one, much higher liability.
And we're pulling our knowledge straight from field reports, from technical standards, everything required for a successful commercial and strata deck inspection in Vancouver.
And the core takeaway here is pretty much non-negotiable. A proper, detailed inspection serves as the necessary protection mechanism.
It's the only way to really safeguard a property against, catastrophic safety hazards and some really expensive compliance failures.
Especially violations of the BC Building Code. The central premise, which we've kind of synthesized from all the material, is this.
Okay.
Before any deck repair commercial work can even begin, that deck has to be deemed safe, structurally sound, and compliant.
And that happens through a comprehensive inspection.
It has to. You just can't guess at structural integrity when dozens, maybe hundreds of people are using that space.
So today, we are going to unpack exactly what that rigorous process entails and frankly, why any property manager or strata council thinking about skipping it is playing a very dangerous and financially disastrous game.
It's a huge gamble.
So let's jump straight into the why. Why is the risk profile so different here? I mean, why are inspections so intensely crucial for a multi-unit property compared to, say, my single-family home?
Well, the difference really boils down to the legal concept of standard of care. And then you combine that with just the sheer scale and frequency of use.
Okay, so it's a legal and a practical issue.
Exactly. First, the liability is astronomical. A strata council, for instance, it operates almost like a corporate entity. They have fiduciary duties,
right?
And they have significantly higher public use safety expectations mandated by law.
So we're not just talking about home insurance anymore. This is corporate risk management.
100%.
Yeah.
When a residential deck fails, it's typically a private insurance claim. But when a multi-unit deck fails,
oh, I can see where this is going.
Especially one that overhangs common property or lower suites, you are immediately dealing with the possibility of multiple injuries, huge property damage to numerous units, and litigation.
All tied to negligence and code violation, I'm guessing?
Precisely. And that leads right into your second point, the structural standards themselves.
They have to be different.
Oh, much stricter. They have to meet much higher loading and guardrail standards, often far beyond what you'd see for a standard residential build.
So if you skip the inspection?
If you skip it, you run this enormous risk of covering up hidden damage. And we're talking about extensive catastrophic rot inside the walls, or a waterproofing failure that's been silently leaching water for years.
So putting a pretty new surface on top of a rotten core.
You're just creating a delayed disaster. The inspection isn't just about documenting what's broken. It's about providing that regulatory clearance you need to operate safely.
Got it. So it's about compliance.
Absolutely. The inspection verifies critical compliance points. It ensures the waterproofing is intact, drainage is working, and the structure meets current BC Building Code standards for live loads. And for the property's insurance, this is vital.
How so?
If a claim arises and there's no documented inspection showing due diligence, the property owner or the strata is just left completely exposed. It's an act of professional protection.
Okay, that makes the why undeniable. So let's unpack the what. If I'm a property manager or on a strata council, what should I be looking for? What are the key areas that contractors are assessing?
It has to be a very structured process, almost forensic. It's never just a quick visual walkthrough.
Right.
It starts with a visual review, then moves into moisture testing with specialized gear, a structural analysis, specific safety checks, drainage evaluation, and it all concludes with a formal professional report.
The sources break this down into 6 distinct assessment areas. Let's walk through them. First one up.
Number 1 is the surface condition assessment. This is the visible layer. You're checking for cracking, bubbling, any soft spots, and, critically, does the deck have the correct slope to shed water away from the building?
And for newer materials.
For vinyl or composite decks, you're looking for any movement that compromises seams or edge seals. If it fails here, you know water's getting in, but you don't yet know how deep the damage goes.
That's just the entry point. The real concern has to be what's underneath.
And that's number 2. The structural integrity review. This is the most crucial part. It determines the entire project's scope.
Okay, so what are you looking at here?
The primary load-bearing components, joists, beams, posts, and most critically, the ledger attachment.
That's where it connects to the building itself.
Exactly. They look for signs of hardware corrosion like bolts rusting out, and any signs of settlement or deflection.
Deflection.
It means the structure is visibly bending under its own weight. If this part fails, you're looking at a serious structural failure hazard.
And since so many strata decks are built over living spaces, I have to imagine waterproofing is the biggest financial threat.
Absolutely. Which brings us to number 3, the waterproofing and drainage check. They look very closely at the membrane terminations, the edges where the waterproofing meets the wall.
Right.
If the flashing is bad or you see chronic drain blockages and ponding water, that is a ticking clock for an interior leak. This step is all about protecting the suites below.
So we've covered water and structure. Let's talk about the immediate human safety elements.
That's number 4. Railing and guard system evaluation. This is entirely driven by code compliance.
So height and spacing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Railing height, spacing between the pickets, the 4-inch sphere rule for kids, and the anchorage system.
How it's bolted on.
And, more importantly, the structural backing behind those anchor points. Even if the railings look fine but don't meet current height codes, that is still a critical hazard.
What about getting on and off the deck?
That's number 5, stairs and landings. This is all about safe transit. They verify the rise and run consistency of the steps.
Because if they're uneven, it's a huge tripping hazard.
A huge one. They also check for non-slip surfaces and the security of the handrails.
Okay, so finally we get to the real detective work, finding the damage you can't see.
Right, the 6th and final area, moisture and rot detection. This is where we use tools like moisture meters, specifically probing vulnerable areas like deck edges and where the deck intersects with the wall.
And the goal here is to find
What?
Mold.
Hidden fungal growth, rot, and potential mold that could be festering inside the framing, often years before it ever shows up as a soft spot on the surface.
And here's where it gets really interesting to me. That forensic level of detail, it's absolutely necessary because it completely dictates the deck repair commercial strategy. You can't just replace the membrane if the joists are rotten.
That is the crux of it. The inspection dictates the solution. Finding a railing height issue, that's a relatively quick fix.
Sure.
But finding extensive corrosion at the ledger attachment, that immediately shifts the project from a surface job to a multi-month structural reconstruction.
Right.
The inspection forces you to face the true scope of the problem.
We've covered the components, but that checklist sounds like a massive undertaking. We should talk about frequency.
We should. For strata and multi-unit properties, the sources strongly suggest these inspections are essential annually. This is not a once-a-decade thing.
Annually. That sounds incredibly proactive. I mean, isn't that overkill if the deck is only, say, 5 years old?
That's a great question, but the frequency is tied directly to legal risk and financial planning. There are huge strata-specific benefits to annual checks.
Such as?
Well, first, they allow strata councils to budget accurately. An annual report tracks how things are degrading, which helps the council avoid those massive, unexpected emergency assessments down the road.
So you're turning an unpredictable crisis into a predictable line item.
Exactly. And it significantly reduces liability exposure because you're creating a documented history of due diligence.
A paper trail.
A paper trail that proves you proactively looked for hazards. It protects interior suites from leaks, which saves millions over time. And crucially for budgeting, these reports provide the technical evidence to support the property's long-term depreciation report planning.
That makes perfect sense. It's planned strategic investment versus reactive emergency repair. So, to really nail this down, let's summarize the key contrast between a commercial inspection and a standard residential one.
The differences are not subtle. They define the entire approach.
Let's start with the obvious one, traffic load.
Commercial properties have high dynamic traffic loads. Lots of people moving around. Residential is generally low to moderate.
And code requirements.
Very strict, often requiring an engineer's sign-off for commercial. Residential is just standard local codes.
Inspection frequency, we know this one now.
Annual for commercial, and ideally every 2 to 3 years for residential.
What about the documentation that comes out of it?
Commercial demands a full, formalized report, photographic evidence, prioritized action items. Residential often just gets a basic checklist, maybe a verbal summary,
And all of that leads to liability.
which is always high for commercial and moderate for residential. This comparison right here, it illustrates why a professional investigation has to come before any deck repair commercial work.
Okay, so the inspection's done. We have this incredibly detailed, prioritized report. How does that translate into a cost-effective repair plan? How does it stop a manager from rushing into expensive work that ignores the most urgent needs?
The report becomes a management tool. It forces strategic planning by ranking hazards by urgency. Structural integrity comes before aesthetics every single time.
So it prevents that classic mistake of, say, replacing old vinyl just because it looks worn when the joists underneath are actually rotten.
Precisely. The document gives you a roadmap. It details the precise order of operations based on risk mitigation.
So what's that typical sequence?
The plan has to follow a strict hierarchy of risk.
And number one must be the foundational structure itself.
Absolutely. Address structural hazards first. If the ledger attachment or main beams are compromised, no amount of surface repair will fix the fundamental safety risk. That gets fixed immediately.
Okay, and number two would be water, the biggest financial risk.
Correct. Correct membrane or waterproofing failures next. You stop the water intrusion, you protect the whole building envelope, prevent future rot, and minimize damage to other suites. You protect the assets.
Makes sense. Three would be public safety.
Yep. Bring stairs and railings up to current code. This is a primary public safety concern and one of the easiest areas for regulators or lawyers to target if an incident occurs.
And then 4 and 5 are the finishing touches.
Restore or replace surfaces. That's the cosmetic step. And then finally, you implement a long-term maintenance plan to make sure this whole process sustains the life of the deck system.
So if we connect this back to the bigger picture.
The central purpose of the inspection is to verify safety, structural integrity, and code compliance using data. And this verified data, it allows for planned, strategic, and optimized investment. That's the cornerstone of effective strata and commercial budgeting.
So what does this all mean? I think the key takeaway for anyone managing, owning, or even living in a strata or commercial property is that safety and compliance, they are not optional extras. They are completely inseparable from the inspection process.
That's right.
It's the foundational step that ensures repairs are accurate, compliant, and ultimately cost-effective because you're preventing those catastrophic failures.
Without a proper documented inspection, the risk of failing to meet safety standards is just too high. The inspection provides those critical compliance protections. Documented structural load verification, confirmed guardrail anchorage assessment.
All the things that matter in a lawsuit.
All the things that matter. Verified egress safety and documented waterproofing performance. It's the disciplined, code-aligned approach that these high-traffic properties absolutely require to mitigate risk.
So we've established that an annual formalized inspection is recommended for high-use decks. It's about liability. It's about the strict requirements in the BC Building Code. So for you, the listener, here's a provocative thought to leave you with.
Okay.
If you know that the BC Building Code mandates strict structural load verification and guardrail anchorage assessment every single year, how does that necessity, that need for constant documented compliance, influence the material choices and the design lifespan of a brand new commercial deck?
That's a really good question.
It essentially forces architects and developers to choose higher quality, longer lasting materials right from the drawing board. They have to, because they know they have to prove that integrity every single year. It forces proactive, high-quality investment over reactive, cheap repair. Think about that the next time you approve a project.